Hi, everybody. I love to see everyone tuning in from all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for this informational webinar about the Google Podcast Creator Program application for 2022. For accessibility reasons, I just want to introduce myself to everyone. My name is Alexandra Blair. I am the project manager, and I'll introduce myself more formally in a second. But for now, I'll say that I am a 30-ish-year-old white woman sitting on my couch, surrounded by artfully oriented things that I hope look aesthetically pleasing to you all. We are trying out the live closed captioning feature today. So if that is something that you are interested in, you can use that feature on Zoom. And I will be attempting my best to belie my nature and talk a little slowly so that closed captioning can pick up what I'm saying pretty accurately. But we are also going to be posting this webinar with closed captioning and a transcription onto our website after the webinar is over. So anyone who would benefit from that, who have signed up for this webinar, will get an email, and that will go up to our website afterwards. Thank you guys again for joining us today. It's really exciting to see people from all over the world. I love hearing where you're from. So if you haven't introduced yourself or said hello, where you're tuning in from, please feel free to do that in the chat. Otherwise, we have a lot of questions to get through today, so I want to get us started. As I mentioned, my name is Alexandra Blair. I am the Google Podcast Creator Program Project Manager. So today, you're only going to be hearing from and seeing video from me. I will be talking about this program. I am very excited about this and very excited to answer all your questions so that you guys get your applications in before the deadline. In the chat, though, are my colleagues. Stephanie Kuo, Director of Training at PRX. She's going to be answering questions, and Tony Carlson, the Manager of Training at PRX. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function of Zoom. We will not be able to keep track of and organize your questions. They're going to get lost in the chat. So please feel free to put those in the Q&A function. We've also already been receiving a lot of your questions through our question form. And so we are going to answer first and primarily the most commonly asked questions, but my colleagues will be in there kind of going over anything that you might put up that they can answer. So today we're going to do an overview of the program itself, just so that we're all on the same page, and talk about the eligibility requirements. And then we're going to answer very frequently asked questions we're getting via email, questions we're getting via the pre-submitted app, probably questions that are already in the Q&A right now. And then we're going to be using whatever time we have left over at the end to do live Q&A and answer any questions we might not have gotten to. Again, if you put your questions in the Q&A function, my colleagues are going to be answering those as we go too. So I might not answer out loud, but it will definitely be answered if it's a question that we can provide you an answer for. Cool. So to just kind of give us all an overview, the Google Podcast Creator Program is a free, and in fact, not just free, you'll see we actually give money to the participants, but it is a free multi-week podcast accelerator program that provides independent podcasters from around the world with creative development and business strategies and audience growth strategies, lots of different resources, mentorship, connections, and funding that will help them level up their podcasts and themselves as podcasters. The accelerator itself is a series of classes, workshops, guest speaker joining us, and presentations that span from June through December of 2022. So PRX is going to select and lead 6 teams through this curriculum. The curriculum itself is pretty rigorous, but very transformational, which is what we have seen in the past 2 cycles of the Google Podcast Creator Program. We talked a little bit about that at our previous webinar, 3 years and counting, looking back on the Google Podcast Creator Program. That is also available on our website, transcripted and captioned, if you want to go back and learn about kind of what we learned and how we got inspired for this new round that is really, really devoted to a mid-career podcaster. So the training itself is 16 weeks of training and mentorship. And we have 4 weeks kind of independent processing time where our teams will work to incorporate some of the things that they've learned. And then we have a final, probably in-person showcase celebration, depending on the state of the world and things at the time, where we will celebrate their progress and turn them out like baby birds that have grown into full-size birds that can fly away in podcasting, if you follow my metaphor. So what is it that we are looking for? What we are looking for with this accelerator, and as I mentioned, we had previously kind of discussed our logic and our reasoning and all of the data behind this new focus in our previous webinar, 3 years and counting. You can find that on our website. Someone can also drop that link in the chat for us. But we are really focused on what we are calling a mid-career podcaster with this accelerator. So we are looking for applicants that are already producing media and or podcasts. In some of our application and our hello everyone, you may have seen this this phrase 3 years. 3 years is not a rough, it's not a hard and fast number. We're not looking for someone who has been podcasting for 3 years necessarily. What we're really looking for is someone who has been podcasting, who has stuff that lives out in the world. They're looking to level up. Our other accelerators were geared towards an entry-level podcaster. This one is not, and it is just not going to benefit people who don't have a podcast that exists out in the world. This really is for creators who are looking to take their current projects and level those up into businesses that they might then be a part of. So I'll say right up front, if you're confused about the 3 years figure, that's okay. There's no requirement of a number of seasons or a number of episodes your podcast should have. We are looking for people who already have podcasts that they're putting out in the world. And if you think that that might apply to you, I encourage you to apply. Even if you've only been podcasting for, say, 2 years, I encourage you to apply. We are just looking to serve those mid-career podcasters. We are also looking for podcasters who have some success. They've got maybe just really excited but small piece of audience. Maybe they're just getting really good press. We're looking for someone who's really enthusiastic with their current projects or maybe a past project and now they're looking to kind of move into something else. We are looking for people who are excited about this conceptually rigorous curriculum and access to all kinds of industry leaders and, kind of exciting new modes of thought. And we are looking for people who are actively trying to diversify what their podcast is. So move beyond just making a podcast into making a really diverse set of offerings, revenue generating streams, attention and interest streams, partnerships, etc. We're going to get into that a little bit later. And then finally, we are looking at people, obviously, who are looking to make their podcast sustainable through teamwork and leveraging their pain and gain points. Also openness to iteration. Like, are you really open for your podcast to change, maybe dramatically, in order to serve your goals? And then, of course, people who are going to follow through and pursue revenue and audience growth strategies that we go over here. So we are also looking for, in terms of concrete specifics, we want people who are willing to pause production during the program. We'll dive into that a little more later. It is not necessarily a requirement to participate in the program. We understand that, especially for accessibility reasons, but for revenue generating reasons, people have contracts and they have things that they need to fulfill. But we have seen that teams who are able to pause production really get a lot more out of the program and are able to give a lot more to their cohort members who are in the program with them. We're also looking for teams with baseline technical and editorial skills. So again, we are not looking for podcasters who are in the early stages, who aren't, we're not going to be teaching you how to edit your podcast or, how to write your podcast. And we are looking for a range of geographies, backgrounds, views, voices, and styles. One of the most exciting things about the Google Podcast Creator Program is just what a mixed bag each cohort is. We really have a very diverse set of alumni who come from all over the world, all kinds of backgrounds. Again, these views and voices and styles. Nothing is ineligible for this program in those directions. And we're going to cover that in a moment here. But first, I just want to talk about what makes a strong application. So what really makes a strong application is a strong concept. That's going to be the biggest thing. Of course, your idea, we want to be excited about your idea. We want you to be excited about your idea. And we want to believe that there's a niche or some really exciting way that your show stands out from what's happening in the market it exists in today. That's going to be different for podcasters across the world. We're looking for creators and teams with audio experience specifically making audio projects. We are looking for passionate creators and passionate teams who are really excited about what they're doing. and have a clear sense of their needs. We would love to hear from you in your application. There's a spot where you can tell us exactly what you need from this program. And to some extent, we've developed our curriculum and we know, what we're experts in and what we can teach you. But all of the guest speakers and all of the mentors we connect you with depend on the needs that your specific cohort has. So if we have 6 teams join us and 6 of those teams need something, we're going to find a way to provide that for you and to engage with experts who can help you if we don't already have those experts on our team or in our sphere. We want to get a clear idea of your pain points and your barriers as a mid-career podcaster, as someone who's already putting their podcast out in the world. Again, we want to hear this vision you have for your project, especially if it kind of exceeds just a podcast. If you have this grand idea for your podcast to become a brand that exceeds just the show, we want to hear about that. And that kind of relates to that excitement and what is surprising or unexpected. We want to be delighted by your show and feel really excited and invested ourselves. That's part of the fun of the program, is that we get to get really invested and really help you guys out in not just the accelerator, but the long term through mentorship and sustained support. So at this point, I want to go ahead and move on. We're going to answer some of the submitted questions. These are questions we've been getting via email, via the form, via Submittable, lots and lots of questions, probably some in the Q&A chat right now. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A chat. I want to reiterate that. My colleagues will be answering those questions, typing the answers to those questions. I will probably be answering a lot of those questions live just because we're getting a lot of the same questions. If you're not sure if you should ask a question, ask it anyway. The fact that there's confusion around something really gives us helpful feedback and shows us where we can improve our messaging and be a little clearer. So please use the Q&A feature instead of raising your hand. We're not going to be unmuting anyone. We're just going to be answering Q&A questions. So let's get to our first set of questions, which are things like this. Can Africa-based podcasts apply? If my podcast is made in Brazil, is it eligible for the program? If people from Spain apply, is this open to podcasters around the world? We've been getting a lot of questions like this, and I want to reiterate right up top, yes, the Google Podcasts Creator Program is an international accelerator. We are so excited and we love this program for this reason. It is open to podcasters worldwide, and it is open to podcasts that exist in languages other than English. So it is great. Okay, awesome. We are excited to receive your application, even if your podcast does not exist in English. I will say, because of the nature of the accelerator and because of our team's limitations around language, it's likely that you will need to help and work with us, and we can work with you and develop this over time. But we're probably going to need some kind of transcripting or translation of certain pieces to understand. The only requirement is at this point that your team is proficient in English to participate in the training. However, as indicated by our application, we are working on our translation efforts and what we can do around that. So if you are feeling like you should still apply and you can put together the application and get through that process, I would encourage that you do that. We are really excited to receive applications from all over the world. We already have been, and that has been very awesome to see. Next up, this series of questions about the in-person training, how long the in-person intensive part of the program is, how many days we'll meet in person. Also, are the sessions going to be virtual? Yes. I will answer all of this. So the first week, and it will be 5 or 6 days of the training, is an in-person intensive. It will take place in San Francisco. This will happen at the end of June, beginning of July. So this in-person week is really going to be, specifics are going to be provided to the people who are selected, but this is a good piece of information to know. The remainder of the training will be conducted virtually. Depending on the situation of the world, we may do an in-person celebration at the end that would take place in December. Location, dates, everything TBD. We're going to have to see, and we're going to have to play it by ear. But for now, we are planning to have in-person week-long intensive in San Francisco at the end of June and July. In the past, the program has taken place entirely virtually, and how that has looked is that we will have weekly meetings with teams that take place at a time and day that works for the greatest number of participants in the cohort. So we work with whoever's selected to find a time of day for our regular class meetings that works for everyone. So we won't know any of that until we know the participants, but you can bank on a weekly meeting and then a series of offerings that are auxiliary to that meeting, that are meetings with mentors that can be scheduled at your own pace, meetings with our team that can be scheduled at your own pace. And all of that takes place virtually. Next question we're receiving a lot of is it mandatory to stop production of the podcast for all of those months? Can we clarify that requirement? Yes, I could definitely clarify that requirement for you. So no one is going to be disqualified on the basis of not being able to pause production. We really understand that this is a mid-career podcaster's livelihood, and we are not looking to interrupt that. So I want to say upfront and reiterate again, no one is going to be disqualified on the basis of not being able to pause their production. However, in the past, we have noticed a gap between teams that are able to pause production to focus on the training and teams that have tried to do both at the same time. In particular, if everyone on your team has a full-time job, is also trying to sustain a podcast, and then is also trying to participate in the program, we have seen that attendance, participation, and to be honest, takeaways and processing really do suffer from trying to do so much. At the same time, as I've said, you're mid-career podcasters, you know your limits, you know them a lot better than me, and you know exactly what it takes from you to produce your show. So do not let this be a reason you don't submit an application. Be honest with us. No one will be disqualified for saying no. And we can get to know you better during the final pieces of the application process and try to understand. So again, no one will be disqualified on this basis, but we really do want people to pause and focus. It really, really does improve. So if there's any way, and our team will work with you to develop marketing messaging or to work with your funders or get institutional support. And this is a big part of the reason why we actually provide a pretty generous amount of production funding that teams can use to offset the cost of participating in this. Another question we're getting a lot is, yes, I know, okay, that I'm going to stop production, but am I allowed to appear elsewhere, particularly on social media? Am I allowed to talk about process and progress? Yes, of course. We love hearing and seeing our cohort members talking about the program on social media. I want to reiterate again that our team can help you draft messaging. We actually have people who work on the training team who are experienced in marketing who have, I know personally, volunteered to help teams draft this kind of messaging where you can talk to your audience and tell them why and what you're doing. In fact, there's all kinds of creative ways you might be able to engage with your audience by doing Patreon or exclusive lives or any other kind of, Substack or messaging that you're interested in. But the answer is yes. We're not asking you to take a break from your life as a podcaster or make your podcast go on hiatus necessarily. We just find that people who are worried about and working on, for example, a weekly production, that's going to really get in the way of your ability to participate to your fullest and get the most out of the program. Again, it's not so much a concern for us that you're not participating. That's part of it. But we actually have just seen that people are not able to kind of digest and really process what we're teaching if they're not taking the time. Another question we're getting a lot of, can someone from a non-podcasting background still apply for this program? We've gotten this question, can you be podcasting for under 3 years? Is there a minimum number of published episodes? I touched on this earlier. I'm going to touch on it again. But this training is specifically geared towards supporting and advancing mid-career podcasters. Now, I understand personally the imposter syndrome around the phrase mid-career and also the confusion. It is a very ambiguous term. So what we are looking for is someone who has worked in audio, has experience in audio, is interested in audio, and are currently making audio projects. That is the bar. That is the bar for what we're looking for here. So we are looking for individuals who are already producing a podcast. The podcast doesn't have to be running right this minute. The season could have ended, 6 months ago, but we are looking for people who have podcast products out in the world. And this bar that I mentioned is really, I'm putting this out there to benefit you guys, because the training is not going to benefit a beginner. as nearly as much as it's going to benefit someone who has already been working in this space for some time. So there's no minimum number of podcast episodes that are required to apply. Like say you have put out maybe 2 series and that happened over the course of 4 years and there's 16, episodes out in the world. Totally that, I would encourage you to apply anyway. If you feel you are somewhat experienced in audio production and podcasting, you should apply. And that's okay if you don't have the heart. If someone else is doing your Pro Tools or your work on the back end, that's okay. You should still feel empowered to apply. I see in the chat, someone says, like, this takes me out. I totally understand. We talked about why we are pivoting to focus on mid-career podcasters in our previous webinar. Again, that's available on our website. It's called 3 Years and Counting. There are links to that in the chat. And we talk specifically about the gap we're seeing for people who are mid-career podcasters, particularly internationally, people who have been working for a long time on podcasts. There are a lot of companies coming in to acquire international podcasters in kind of exploitative ways, to be quite honest. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help international podcasters have the outcomes that they really want rather than just getting sucked up by these big companies. So we're looking to help you guys develop your own audience growth and business development strategies, not just have to kind of take the first deal that comes your way. We want to help you guys strategize about your podcast and your brand as a business. Next question. Is this program doable for people who have full-time jobs? How many hours per week? What is the schedule of the program? So this is admittedly an intensive training program. Our curriculum is quite rigorous. The hours per week are really going to depend on your podcast team's needs. We would estimate a minimum of 10 hours a week during this specific program. So previously, that estimate has been a little higher. We are working actively to make our programs as accessible as possible. And in some ways, we have adapted the format of our curriculum to be something of a choose your own adventure. So if your team wants to do extra work, wants extra meetings, wants more mentorship, that is always going to be available to you. I would estimate that your team will spend a minimum of 10 hours a week doing some combination of the following. And this will give you an idea of the format of the curriculum as it has appeared in past iterations of the program and as it will appear in this iteration of the program. So we do have weekly online sessions. And as I had mentioned earlier, those online sessions will reflect the availability of the participants. So if all of the participants are available midday Thursday, those sessions are likely to take place midday Thursday. In the past, those sessions have been a few hours of collaborative work, of guest speaking, of activities and lectures and ideas presented by our team, presented by PRX, and also presented by a carousel of very, very talented industry experts and professionals from some of the audio industry's leading companies and thought leaders, to be quite honest. That is the keystone of our accelerator model, especially for the mid-career podcasters, that networking and development is going to be crucial. We also will have meetings that are scheduled at, again, choose your own pace, meeting with your program mentors and industry professionals. So we have our team is available as mentors to everyone who participates in the program. And in the past, we've had something like a bi-monthly, twice per month check-in with every one of the teams. Some of the teams chose to meet with me every week. Love that and fully make myself available for that. So we definitely want to, again, choose your own adventure. But that will be part of what's happening there. So if you have a mentor meeting once per month, that's part of your workload. Completing assignments. We do have assignments. And again, those assignments are not so much busy work. Really what those assignments are like transformative new ways to think about your workflow or your audience growth or your marketing or your business strategy. So those assignments are going to be like draft a business plan or draft a business mission statement. And we're going to have an expert come in and review that with you and critique that. So those assignments really are going to feel like work you're probably already doing or work that probably already exists on a to-do list somewhere for your podcast, developing a pitch deck, etc. So those assignments are really designed to actually be immediately helpful to you and your team. And again, are probably things that are already existing on your podcast to-do list. We also are going to be having you, of course, produce some audio. That happens over the course of the curriculum. And then there's a good portion of the cohort and of our process that is about giving feedback to the other teams and being present to the other teams. We at PRX say that feedback is a gift, and most of our participants have said that the most helpful part of our training was just having a group of peers collected in one spot that could give them feedback for exactly what they were doing and what they were doing in real time and how they were iterating in real time. It's actually quite hard to get feedback in the real world for your show, as many of you podcasters know. Most of the feedback you get is via reviews, and it can be hard to track people down. So that's also a big part of the training. So in sum of all of that massive words that I just said, I will reiterate that we are fully aware that this is a rigorous and intensive training. It is designed that way. We will work with your teams at every step of the way to make sure that the training is accessible to you and that you are able to participate fully. And we will respect and regard your needs as professionals working full-time jobs, probably, and also working in the podcast space, however intensively. So that is a lot of text and not the easiest to answer, but gives you guys a full idea of the program and the requirements. Great. Another question we're getting a lot, and I've seen a couple of these in the chat, are programs on blank topic allowed to apply? Are programs of this format allowed to apply? The answer is yes. So we are accepting any and all format and style covering any topic for this accelerator. I will say up front that PRX really values diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in everything that we do. So we naturally prioritize and support teams that show that they are furthering these goals through representation, community engagement, and content. But yes, if you have a chat cast that is about sports, you are still eligible to apply. I saw a question if your program is about mental health or if your program is about wellness. Yes, any topic, any format is allowed to apply. We are excited to receive your applications and to hear from you. I also see a question in the chat, which do not take that as a cue to put things in the chat. Definitely put them in the Q&A, but about sharing the recording later. So I want to reiterate that for you. The recording will be shared later. It will be transcripted and closed captioned. A link to that will go out to everyone who registered for this webinar, and it will go up to our website. We're also having another webinar just along these lines, so you can feel free to submit questions. These questions are very common ones that we keep receiving. You can feel free to submit questions and come back and hang out with me again next Friday, and we'll be answering even more of your questions. Great. Another common question, I've previously applied. Can I apply again? If I've been in a previous PRX accelerator, am I eligible to apply? Can I get feedback on my previous application? So there's a few answers for you here. I have previously applied. Can I apply again? Yes, definitely. We love to hear from you. We especially love to hear that you've made progress or that you've created something new and exciting or that you have advanced and iterated your idea over time. So definitely apply again. Are alumni from other PRX accelerators eligible to apply? The answer is yes, they are. And in terms of getting feedback on your previous application, at this time, we are not able to give individual feedback. We just have such an overwhelming number of interest and applications that have come in. The Google Podcast Creator Program alone has received over 13,000 applications. So we definitely we definitely can't give feedback on individual applications. So unfortunately, that is not going to be possible. But you definitely can apply, take a critical eye to your own application from previous years and kind of try to express to us how you've grown or iterated or changed over time. And we would love to hear that. Great. So how and when will applicants be notified if they're selected into the program? So selected participants will be notified by email in early June. And that is what we've got for you so far. We'll have a stronger idea of the timeline as we go through the process, and we'll be over communicating, I'm sure, via email once you submit your application. We'll be letting you know as soon as those deadlines are formalized, and teams will know in early June whether or not they will be able to, they're going to be participating. Great. So use that Q&A feature. I see we have a lot of questions. My colleagues in the chat are answering those and surfacing those to me. I'm going to answer some that I've seen come up a few times. In particular, I see this one from someone who works on a branded podcast for a nonprofit. And so their question is, we are a nonprofit. We don't run advertisement. We don't make money from our show. We're funded entirely by donations. Can we still apply for the creator program? Is it going to be relevant to us? And the answer is yes. We have definitely worked with a number of podcasts who have been nonprofits and who have been donation funded and who have been institution funded and tied to institutions. We have had several of those in the past 2 cohorts alone. So this program is definitely still going to feel relevant for you when we talk about business strategies, business growth, and monetization. We definitely are also including institutional funding and donation funding in those topics. So yes, I would say that this program is definitely still going to feel relevant and helpful to you. Are there any specifications or recommendations for who should attend from the podcast production team? So do both of the team members need to be working on the podcast? I'm working on the show alone, but in order to develop its sound, I'm now working with a musician. Could we both apply as a team, even if we haven't started working together yet? So this question gets to the fact that many podcast teams have more than 2 people, but unfortunately, because of just restraints around budget and facilitating and logistics, we are only able to accept 2 team members for each team into the accelerator. So if your team is chosen and you have a team of 4, you're going to need to pick basically 2 team members. And what we typically recommend is that you pick 2 team members who are going to, like, whose work relates to what we're talking about, and are different, right? So maybe not necessarily 2 hosts, maybe 1 host and 1 sound engineer, for example. So in response to this question, yes, I think it would be totally fine if you are a team of 1, if you are just starting to work with an editor or maybe a researcher or maybe a writer or maybe a social media manager. It would totally be okay for you to apply and bring that person along with you. I also want to point out that we will have a number of sessions and guest speakers and breakouts and all kinds of activities that we do, including presentations, that will be open to the public, and then many that are open to the public at large. So these more public, and I'm making air quotes with my fingers, there's like a semi-public version of some of our events where you are able to bring other team members. For example, if we do a breakout session around marketing or around audio design, or if we're doing a presentation in which you and your cohort members are pitching your podcast to a panel of industry experts, your entire team is going to be able to attend those events, and there will be space for them there. We are only able to accommodate 2 in the weekly meetings and in our in-person intensive. So that's really where it's going to count, who from your team you decide to kind of send. I see another question that says, hello, I read on the website's FAQ that limited series are not eligible. We work on seasonal material that comes out once a year. Does this kind of material apply? Yes, that kind of material definitely is material we want to work with. When we say limited series, it's more so like if you put out a podcast and the podcast is done now and it came out in 3 episodes, that's more of what we're talking about when we're talking about a limited series. Anything seasonal or serial is definitely part of, what is acceptable and what we're looking for. And again, if you have questions and you're thinking like, well, I put out 3 limited series and I've been doing this for 5 years, I think that still makes you eligible to apply. And when in doubt, I would say definitely apply. I'm seeing a lot of that type of question. So I see another couple questions that are about explaining what stands out for podcasts on the program. I'm going to reiterate that from kind of one of those earlier slides that we had looked at, and kind of read off that slide. But basically, we're looking for really strong concepts, really passionate, excited creators, people who are excited to learn from what the program has to offer, and then take what that program is offering and really incorporate it. So we're looking to hear your excitement. The application can feel very academic, stoic, and anything you can do to resist that. We work with Submittable. It is an accessible program, and it is one of the tools that we have available to us, although it is not a perfect tool. And in an ideal world, we would have a more fantastical solution. But anything you can do to show your passion and show your excitement is going to make your application stand out. I think another thing that really makes an application stand out is a unique idea. In particular, right now, we've got more podcasts than ever before. We love to hear those unique ideas that are really serving niches that we never even thought of, needs that we never even thought of in communities that don't typically receive service or attention. We're definitely looking for that. I'm seeing some questions that are around topics, and I want to reiterate that again. So I'm specifically answering this one from Shireen. My podcast focuses on teaching a language. Does that work? Does it need to be storytelling? Does it need to be interview based? No, it doesn't need to be anything. The podcast that you're submitting for the creator program can be any format, any topic, any language. It is that broad, and that's part of what's so exciting about this program. You are so welcome, Shireen. So anyone who's wondering if their topic or format is eligible, yes, it's eligible. A couple quick ones I can knock out is how long is that program overall? Charmaine, I will answer that for you. The program does run from late June, like the last week of June, through the first week of December. And again, it's 16 weeks of curriculum. And then there's like 4 weeks where you're going to be able to kind of process on your own. There's no classes in those 4 weeks. And then we'll gather again on the 20th week and kind of celebrate and look at the progress and the final deliverables of the program. So yes, June through December, but the predominant like thrust of the work will be accomplished by November. Work as far as the course is concerned, podcasters' work is never done. I also see this question from Renee. This is an easy one to answer. Are you responsible for travel and lodging for that first week? PRX will be covering all related travel, lodging, expenses, Ubers to the airport. You will not be responsible for travel and lodging in that first week. That's on us. Interesting question from Tanita. Do we have to continue the current or recent podcast, or are you okay with us, if we just exited a project and we're working on a new project? I would encourage you to apply. Again, when we're talking about mid-career podcasters, we're not necessarily saying someone who's worked on the same podcast for 3 years. We're just looking for people who are working in the audio industry, who are going to take what we've learned and use that to kind of move along in the audio industry. So it's okay if you end up, some of our alumni end up saying, I actually hate podcasting. I'm going to work in a totally different capacity in the audio industry. Or I'm going to teach podcasting because I actually don't want to do what I've been doing. Great. Some people emerge from the program with an entirely different show than they applied with. And those are all awesome outcomes. We love when teams are open to change. So definitely, if you are open to change, that's definitely going to be exciting for us and not at all a detriment to your application. I see a question in the chat just about missing the webinar. I want to reiterate again, and I'll just keep saying this throughout, but this webinar is being recorded. It will be transcribed and closed captioned and posted to our website. Elias, if you subscribed or registered, if you subscribe to our email list, or if you registered for this program, this webinar via Zoom specifically, you will get a link to it, and you can find it on our website. So don't worry about that. All the information will be available. We are also doing this webinar again, a version of it, next week to answer more questions. So we'll definitely get there. What level of technical proficiency in terms of audio, adjustment, sound design, et cetera, is required? We do not have any kind of requirement around technical proficiency. There is no test. In fact, most of what we are doing is not going to be about sound editing We do have resources for that available for people who need it throughout the trainings, and we do provide those. But most of our trainings assume some sort of baseline technical skill. Now, that word is pretty vague. Baseline, what does it mean? It just means, do you so far kind of possess a proficient technical skill, a technical skill that is at the level that you are currently producing a podcast? So maybe you don't have a Pro Tools wizard on your team or a Descript wizard on your team who can make the coolest podcast. Maybe you are not technically proficient enough to be making the podcast that exists in your head. That's okay. That's awesome. We can help you get there. But we will not be teaching anyone how to use editing technology from the ground up. Again, we do have resources available a lot on our website for people who are just starting out in terms of their podcasting career. So if you don't know what a cardioid mic is, or what a shotgun is, or what a pop screen is, we have resources for you that are available. But this program is probably not right for you if you don't have some, again, baseline technical proficiency. I want to reiterate one last time, that doesn't mean that if you're in your mind wanting to work with a sound designer or not fully happy with your show, that you can't apply. That's the type of progress we definitely can engage with and work with. Another question I'm seeing in regards to the podcast sample: do you recommend sending in a trailer or a real sample of an existing episode? So for that audio sample, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't actually even need to be a trailer or a sample of an episode. It could just be a clip of a really moving moment that happened on your show, for example, or something really hilarious that gets to the core of what your podcast is. We ask, and we specifically word that kind of as an audio sample for that reason. We've had teams kind of send in something more like a mood board where we just get a feeling about their show. Whatever you think is going to help your show stand out or kind of honor your vision for the show or give us the clearest idea of why your show is special, that's what I want you to submit. And we actually even have a space under the audio sample where you can provide a description to us of what we're looking for. So you can write a fun little manifesto under there about why what we're hearing is the best possible representation of your show. And that would be really awesome. Is it mandatory for all members of a team to attend the in-person week at the start? Traditionally, that has been mandatory. We are definitely going to work with teams who have accessibility concerns or availability concerns. We're going to work with you. Our intention and our passion and our preference is that people attend that in-person week at the start. Yes. Elena asks in the chat, in Q&A, I have one more question. Is there a list of podcast alumni somewhere? Yes, there is a list of podcast alumni on our website. Somebody can put that link in the chat for me. One of my lovely colleagues, Tony and Stephanie, who are really doing amazing work, answering and surfacing all your questions and dropping links. Yes, you can check out the Google Podcast Creator Program website, and it has all that information on there. I see. Arthur asks, I have been working on radio for a decade, and while I have created various recorded shows and episodes, I haven't made a podcast in the traditional sense. Can I apply for the program? Yes. I think if you have made audio projects and been working in audio and you're thinking about audio, that is definitely something that would make you eligible for the program. Definitely working on radio is, I would say, a lateral move from podcasting. So yes, Arthur, I would recommend that you definitely apply for the program. I see a couple questions about the link to the application. So if you click on the link that was just dropped in the chat right now, training.prx.org/programs/Google Podcast Creator Program, it's in the chat. There is a link to the application page on Submittable on our website. And lovely Tony just dropped a link in the chat to the Submittable page with the PRX specific application. So that's definitely the application we need from you. In the application, we have a couple notes about accessibility. We also have a plain text version of the application in a Google Doc that you can work on. So I've been getting some share requests from some of you. I cannot make you an editor on that document, but I will share a read-only copy. It's linked on that link right there on the submittable page. You can make a copy by going to File, Make a Copy in the Google Doc, and then you and your team can work on that application offline and actually be kind of collaboratively working, because I think Submittable has a new feature where you can work collaboratively as well, but that's very, very brand new, maybe in the past week. So I am not personally sure how to accomplish that, and I can't speak to that. I have a question from Kudsia. If I understand correctly, if it's a team of 3, for instance, only 2 would be able to come to that in-person portion of the training, but the third would participate in other virtual events. So to clarify, only 2 team members will participate in the in-person portion of the training for sure, and only 2 team members will participate in the accelerator in all of the classes. There will be events along the way sporadically where we may be able to host more members of your team. But for all intents and purposes, 2 members of your team will be able to participate in all of the accelerator and auxiliary sessions. I see a question in here, another from Tanita. Great question. Thank you. About if our new project has not been launched yet, but we have past projects, should we apply with the new or the past? There is actually a section in the application I'm proud of and excited to read that is about previous projects. So apply with the new project that you're going to be working on, that we would be working on together. Get us all excited about that project. And then at the end of the application, there is a question that asks, have you worked on any other projects that you're really proud of and you want to share with us? Have you worked on any other podcasts that you're proud of and want to share with us? Those are 2 separate questions on the application. So you can feel free to fill that out and get us all excited about your past work as well. I see a question from Jen Hardy. I'm bringing someone on who owns an editing company. She just informed me she's getting a new full-time job. I am the host, creator, and current editor. So if she can't come with me, could I bring a different editor? Yes, you definitely could. I think I answered a similar question earlier. It's totally okay if your team changes a little bit between now and then. We will work with you to figure it out, but it's okay if you're just starting a relationship with someone and you bring them in. In fact, I think that's going to be really beneficial for you to develop a shared language and understanding right at the beginning of your relationship with a new editor. Excuse me, I should have muted. I see a question in the chat, which I'm being a bad host by answering questions from the chat. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A. But this question says, for the 6 teams you select, will you be selecting teams from 6 different regions? So we are not going to be necessarily disqualifying anyone if they come from this region or that region just to get 6 different regions. We are going to be selecting the 6 strongest podcast applications and projects that we are really excited to work with. So they will ideally, hopefully represent, as we have said, we really prioritize representing a diverse range of backgrounds and geographic locations and views. And so the cohort will definitely reflect that. Lots of other questions about topic and format. I want to reiterate again, the topic and format, definitely we're open to anything. I'm seeing a couple really interesting questions about video podcasts. So yes, if you have a video podcast, definitely apply. Provide an audio sample where we ask for an audio sample, but there is a piece of the application, the very last question, that's about, hearing your passion, hearing your vision for the podcast. And that is a spot where we accept any media file. So you can provide a PowerPoint, you can provide a document, a plain text document that just has words in it. You can upload a cell phone video of you talking about your project. You could upload a clip of your video content. We definitely are accepting video podcasts, and we are encouraging you to apply. So just provide the relevant links. We have a lot of space on the application for you to kind of show off your video projects. I love this question from Debbie that says, what results can we expect from the program? Great question, Debbie. Let me tell you. How will this improve our podcast? So basically what we had noticed after the end of the first 3 years of the Google Podcast Creator Program, and you can see this on our webinar that we have posted on our website, 3 years and counting inside the Google Podcast Creator Program. we talked about this phenomenon we were seeing where people graduated from the program. They had really ironclad concepts. They had strong audience that was being developed because their concept was so strong with their audience. And they were seeing a good amount of press, maybe, and excitement from their audience, but they weren't really sure how to make a business out of it. And this is like a main theme among definitely this program's alumni, but among mid career podcasters the world over. We are hearing this a lot. People are not sure how to actually make a business of what they're doing, even as they're seeing good press or really good audience or really exciting things happening in their life. They don't know how to capitalize it. So, this program is specifically designed to help mid career podcasters. Putting air quotes around the word mid-career because we are looking for people who are already producing podcasts, and that's what we mean by mid-career. But we are looking to help them find new ways to leverage the wins that they're already seeing and to develop their business and their audience. And that is specifically what this program is about. So there will be conceptual development happening, which is a through line of all of our accelerators. You will emerge from this program with a much stronger idea of your concept and a stronger relationship to your concept, and you will know exactly why your concept needs to exist as it is. We find that with the mid-career podcaster, most podcasters are doing this work intuitively already. So most people making podcasts for some time have an idea of the need that they're filling in their audience's lives, which is part of what we teach. But this specifically will focus on business development, making business plans, looking at the different ways that podcasters have successfully, particularly independent podcasters, have successfully diversified their brand and their podcast and their own offerings in authentic ways that honor their pain points and honor their leverage points. But we are going to be looking at and hearing from and learning from podcasters who've done it before, who have kind of branched out into different directions and supplemented their simple audio only podcast with, let's say, live events or trainings or co-branded productions or books, etc. Lots of different ways that this can look. We're also going to be learning about audience growth strategies, how you can tap into and leverage your audience's unique passion for your show. Because we find that most people who've been podcasting for some time have those dedicated audience members who've listened to all 700 episodes of your show in 1 week. Those really are the sort of audience growth inroads that we're going to be helping you develop and build over time. So people who emerge from this program will emerge with an ironclad concept, business development strategies, audience growth strategies, also a cohort of really impressive and awesome mid-career podcasters who are hustling your hustle the world over, who are doing what you're doing, who you're going to be able to rely on for feedback. You also emerge with connections to a network of very talented industry thought leaders who are going to be making themselves available for you throughout the program, and direct mentorship from our team of experts as well. So I think that we are just about on time. And I know that we haven't gotten to nearly half of the questions. I want to encourage anyone whose question wasn't answered to submit their question via the early submit form. Tony, would you mind terribly dropping that in the chat, please, if you have it on hand? If you haven't had your question answered here today, drop it in this box. We are going to be continuing to answer questions throughout the coming weeks, and we want to make sure that everyone feels confident about submitting their podcast and submitting their application. We are going to be having a webinar just like this one next Friday, 1 week in the future, and I will be answering your questions then. So if your question didn't get answered today, it will get answered next week, let's hope. We're going to be making an effort to not answer the same questions. So if those questions come up next week, I will probably be referring people back to this week. Again, both this webinar, that webinar, and the webinar I mentioned earlier, 3 years and counting, about our experience running the Google Podcast Creator Program, are all available on our website. They are transcripted and they are closed captioned. If you signed up for this webinar today, you'll be getting a link to that page on our website in your inbox later next week. And otherwise, you can find that at training.prx.org. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad I'm seeing some people saying we clarified some things. That was the goal. So it's good to hear from you guys. If you have more questions, please submit those in that form and or register for next week's webinar so that you get it right to your email inbox. I'm going to read out Stephanie's encouragement here. We want you to apply. We definitely do. We're not trying to scare you away. If this program sounds like it could be useful for you, apply. That is the bottom line here. We are a holistic reviewing committee. We are definitely going to be making our decisions based on several factors. So if this program sounds like it would be helpful to you, we want to hear from you. Even if it seems like maybe it wouldn't apply to you in some direction, let us know. We are going to be working with everyone we're excited to work with and moving mountains to do so. So please apply. Yay. I'm so excited. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.